Arrakis, Dune, desert planet. Arrakis, Dune, desert planet. Arrakis, Dune, desert planet. Curiosity reduced Paul's fear to a manageable level. He heard truth in the old woman's voice, no denying it. If his mother stood guard out there, if this was truly a test, whatever it was, he knew himself caught in it, trapped by that hand at his neck, the Gom Jabbar. He recalled the response from the litany against fear, as his mother had taught him out of the Bene Gesserit rite. I must not fear. Fear is the mind killer. Fear is the little death that brings total obliteration. I will face my fear. I will permit it to pass over me and through me. And when it has gone past, I will turn the inner eye to see its path. Where the fear is gone, there will be nothing. Only I will remain.
It's certainly been a while since I last put a fully dedicated movie review up on the channel, specifically for a new film that had just been released into theaters. But today I decided to take a look at the brand new adaptation of the sci-fi classic, Dune. And for those who aren't familiar with the Dune universe or the book series, let me at least get a small rundown of the publication of the first novel, as well as the history of adaptations that have come since its release. Dune is a science fiction novel written in 1965 by Frank Herbert and was followed by 5 subsequent sequels: Dune Messiah, Children of Dune, God Emperor of Dune, Heretics of Dune, and Chapter House Dune. All future books in the series have since been written by Brian Herbert and Kevin J. Anderson. During the early 70s, there was a large amount of talk as to how a film adaptation would be made from the novel, and at the time, Alejandro Jodorowsky was very close to doing his own version. The film had already been casted, storyboarded, designs were made by H.R. Giger, but ultimately the project would never come to fruition. It wouldn't be until 1984 when we would get our first film adaptation of Dune, directed by David Lynch. Yes, that David Lynch.
You are witnessing a front three-quarter view of 2 adults sharing a tender moment.
I think I'm high!
There's nothing quite like urinating out in the open air.
I don't want to talk. I want to shoot.
I had another Monica Bellucci dream.
What the hell was that?
After the film was released to pretty abysmal critical and audience reception, it wouldn't be until the year 2000 when we would get another adaptation of the first book, this time as a TV miniseries made for the Sci-Fi Channel. Titled as Frank Herbert's Dune, the goal of the miniseries was to make an adaptation which stuck much closer to the source material, mostly due, in part, to the much longer runtime, with the director's cut of the 3 episodes combined coming to a runtime of nearly 5 hours. And while the adaptation did get a very large amount of praise, specifically for its acting and its cinematography, the visual effects were downright terrible at times. But then again, this had a much lower budget than even the David Lynch movie, and it was made for TV in the year 2000. It's not exactly a surprise how the effects are so bad. Also, the costume design for this adaptation verges on the massively ridiculous at times. I mean, good lord, look at what they did to the Reverend Mother Gaius Helen Mohiab.
Putting his desires above our interests. How dare you turn your back on the centuries of our breeding programs?
There, sure glad I don't look stupid in this.
Anyway, thanks to the success of the miniseries, a sequel was produced which combined both the second and third books in the series, and was received even better than its predecessor, with there even being talks at the time about possibly adapting God Emperor of Dune, but ultimately it was scrapped. After then, the franchise lay dormant for the longest time, until years later when French-Canadian director Denis Villeneuve, the director behind Prisoners, Sicario, and Blade Runner 2049, came around to finally tackle this beast. Which brings us to today with Dune, the first of a planned 2-part film series, with part 2 now set for release in October 2023. Dune takes place in the year 10191 AG, or after the Guild. The main story follows Paul Atreides, son of the Lady Jessica and the Duke Leto Atreides of the planet Caladan. Over the last 80 years, House Harkonnen has had control over the planet Arrakis, the desert planet which produces the spice melange. To the Fremen, the native inhabitants of Arrakis, spice is also a way of prolonging life, and the people use it so much that it has led to their characteristic blue eyes. But for the rest of the universe, spice is the essential ingredient needed for successful and safe intergalactic travel, thanks in part to the Spacing Guild and its navigators, for he who controls the spice, ultimately, controls everything. After House Harkonnen is told to leave Arrakis by Emperor Shaddam IV, the control of the planet is then transferred to House Atreides under the guise of a gift. However, unbeknownst to them, the Emperor has been becoming increasingly jealous of the popularity of House Atreides with the rest of the Landsraad, and so the Emperor makes a deal with Baron Vladimir Harkonnen to wipe out their rivals, even gifting him 3 battalions of his Imperial Sardaukar to help in the fight. Young Paul has even been having dreams of the planet, mostly of the young Fremen girl named Chani, because of his upbringing with his mother teaching him the ways of the Bene Gesserit, and with his teachings of becoming a Mentat, along with his exposure to spice. Paul begins receiving visions of multiple possible futures, all of which point to him as a messiah-like figure known to the Fremen as Lisan al-Gaib, and to the Bene Gesserits as the Kwisatz Haderach. He even receives visions of a large-scale jihad, all within his name. And that's about as much as I can say about the story without leading to much larger spoilers for both the first half of the book as well as for the entire movie. What I will say though is if you haven't read Frank Herbert's novel or haven't seen the film yet, do both as soon as humanly possible. The novel is of course a science fiction classic, and in my opinion is absolutely required reading. As for the film, Denis Villeneuve has done it yet again. Dune Part 1 is an absolute masterwork of filmmaking. The film also bolsters an all-star cast that truly embody their respective characters. We have Timothée Chalamet as Paul, Oscar Isaac as Duke Leto, Rebecca Ferguson as Lady Jessica, Zendaya as Chani, Stellan Skarsgård as the Baron Harkonnen, Dave Bautista as Rabban, Josh Brolin as Gurney Halleck, Javier Bardem as Stilgar, and Jason Momoa as Duncan Idaho. The film's pacing is surprisingly very brisk for a 2.5-hour runtime, and the cinematography just looks absolutely gorgeous. Many of the shots in this movie had my jaw just completely on the floor. It was great. That said, we must also acknowledge the biggest hero of the film in my opinion, the element that elevates the movie from already great to masterpiece levels, and that is the musical score by Hans Zimmer. There are times when I was listening to the score and I felt like my ears were about to have a friggin' orgasm. I know that's a graphic you don't really want to hear about, but damn it, it's true. As much as I would like to keep gushing about the film, there are some minor negatives I would like to get out there. Now for myself, I thought the pacing was very good, though I acknowledge that the film is mostly designed as a slow burn, and for some, will get bored of this movie. I also felt that they should have ended the movie a slight bit sooner, rather than pretty much at the exact halfway point of the book, right after Paul and Jessica are accepted into the Fremen people. I think it possibly could have been cooler to end on the Harkonnen attack against House Atreides, ending off on a big cliffhanger for where everything would go next. That said, I can't recommend this film enough. The story is fantastic, the acting is superb, the directing and the cinematography and the score are all absolutely on point. This is definitely a movie that needs to be seen in the cinema. However, I do acknowledge the still ongoing pandemic, so if you have a subscription to HBO Max, hop on there while it's still up there until November 21st. And so that was my review of Dune. What did you guys think of it? Tell me down in the comments below if you've seen the film and what your thoughts are on it. Be sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you all in the next one.